Hey folks, Papa Boris here. With the second two-player game to finish in the 2025 Through the Ages World Championship, I got a little bit unlucky actually. You might notice that I was second in my game against Nasty Michael and also second in my game against Peppe. It's kind of a weird thing with the tournament structure, which is that every player either gets to go first in 2 out of 3 two-player games or second. You can't make it be even. And my one game that I went first was against Spillis Willis, who timed out. So there won't be another two-player game to showcase, unfortunately. He timed out basically in like turn 3 or 4 or something, and I just had to finish it against the AI. So it's a little bit sad. I was going second in both games against my real opponents. Peppe here grabs Cleopatra, which I would have also done, and a pretty boring draft. No one likes Moses, and of course I'm not going to pass on the pyramids. Certainly I don't want to give the pyramids to my opponent who just took Cleopatra, because this card was taken. Even if I take only cards from here, like Moses and Rich Land, which would, I guess, be the natural thing to do alternatively, the pyramids does go down to this spot, and I think that's just silliness. So I pass the turn after taking pyramids, and we're over to Peppe. Now, he's got Cleopatra, so, of course, he's going to play Cleopatra and take the Wonder. He also has an interesting decision here for his fourth action after raising population: build a mine, build a lab, or build a stage of Stonehenge. In my opinion, the correct play here is to build the lab. With Cleopatra, if you're using her extra rock every turn, it's kind of like having your third mine already built. And with the Stonehenge having all these low-cost stages, it's really easy to keep using her ability. In fact, you can spend both your rocks to make a lab, then on your next turn build a mine, and with 0 rocks left, you use the Shadow Rock from Cleopatra to build the first stage of this wonder and get a free convenient usage. Peppe, however, decides to build a stage of the Wonder, and I think this is actually the worst of the options, because you're not getting your mine built. You are using up Cleopatra's power, but the Stonehenge science, you're getting 6 science no matter what. No matter when you build it, you're always going to get the same 6 science. But the science that you get for building a lab, if you don't get it now, you're never getting it back. So I think the correct play is to get this built first. And yes, of course, there is the consideration of, oh, but then you get your wonder done sooner. Well, I think Stonehenge is not really a wonder that needs to be rushed. Yeah, it's make an extra culture. Yeah, you get kind of a worker, I guess. But you don't need to rush this wonder. It's just there for providing you the science when you need it. And I think that building a lab would have made a lot more sense. Even building a mine would have made more sense if you want to pass on Cleopatra's power. So we're going to pass the turn here. I was happy to see that. And now I need to take a leader, and I decide to grab an age-old combination way back in the olden days of Through the Ages in the late 2000s. This was a classic combo, one of the strongest combos at the time: Aristotle and Pyramids. Aristotle gives you science, and the Pyramids give you an extra action, which makes it easier to take more cards and play more cards and actually use this ability to get more science. So I was happy about that. Very normal first turn here. I'm going to play the Aristotle, make a mine. And, okay, do I feel frisky and take an urban growth, risking missing out on an event because I don't have a worker, or do I play the population? Here I played the population, though I will say that in some of Wiedenbaum's games that I watched, people will grab that urban growth to get the rock, and in general, it's maybe not that specifically, but in general, the high-ranked opponents he plays against, and himself maybe, they don't really mind missing out on this worker. The risk of losing a development of religion. Maybe I overvalue that a little bit. Maybe it is better just to grab the rock here, because we are going to run into, the turn 2 doldrums, and so having something to do on the next turn, if it's a problem, you're going to wish that you had spent that action getting a rock the previous turn. All right, so we pass the turn. I get the Dark Ages, which I'm really happy about, because Dark Ages is really good against Stonehenge. If, like I talked about in the previous video when I had Stonehenge, if your opponent builds this wonder, gets a bunch of science, but doesn't have a monarchy or a code of laws to use with it, then you can make them lose a bunch of science with the Dark Ages while you yourself are relatively unharmed. Okay, so my opponent plays an event. He gets the free population, which neither of us is happy about. It's always annoying when you get it out of here. You want that hit to hit when you're getting it out of this part of the bank where the workers cost 3. He pays 2 rocks for Engineering Genius, which I'm not a fan of still. And in this particular case, he's got stuff to do. He needs to build his lab. He needs to build a mine. He can do both things right now. And he also needs to get going on this wonder. Now, to be fair, you cannot make a mine and a lab and continue building the wonder. But I would frankly have taken, like, Swordsman over this Engineering Genius. I think this is such a high impact card. It's a good way to use your science, and it just helps a lot, whether it helps you get stronger or whether it helps you avoid your opponent's strength pushes. Depriving Aristotle of a one-action swordsman is good as well. I think that this was a misplay in this particular case. He also continues going on this wonder, building a mine and a stage, but again, I think it would have been smarter, even here, to build a lab. He has now given up 2 science because he did not build the previous turn, and he's giving up a science now because he didn't build a lab this turn. You know, he had the extra rock to build it with instead of the stage of this wonder. I think it's actually wrong in this case to rush it. It's one of those things where when you're thinking about, okay, do I want to rush my wonder or build a lab? It's not just like, what do I like better, rushing wonders or building labs? You have to think about the wonder that you have under construction. Something like the pyramids makes a lot more sense to rush. Sooner you build this, the sooner you have an extra action. That might be worth giving up some science for. But with Stonehenge, the main effect of it is independent of the time in which you get it. Get a happy face now, happy face later, it's the same thing. Get the 6 science now or 6 science later is the same thing. The only thing you're missing out on is some culture, and it's a very small amount very early in the game. So I do think that Peppe misplayed strategically, focusing on the wonder the previous turn and this turn instead of building this lab. Now, I'm very happy about what's happening here because what I get to do on my turn is after building my second lab, I take Code of Laws and I take Swordsman, so I get 2 science from Aristotle. I've got 2 strong techs, and I can get the Code of Laws next turn. That plus the pyramids means that I am set for civil actions for a while. In Age 3, things do get a little bit uncomfortable if you only have 6 actions, but for a long time, 6 actions is phenomenal, and it takes the pressure off not having to get a government. All right, Pepe is up here. And he plays an event. It's this, we get some free stuff. So he grabs Theology, builds a stage of the wonder with Engineering Genius, and he finishes it. He also raises population, and then he passes the turn. Oh, no, he doesn't. He actually builds a warrior, I beg your pardon. Was that needed to avoid corruption? It was. He avoids corruption by building a warrior, perfectly reasonable, and then he passes the turn. So on my turn, I'm really happy to see Alchemy in the first row. That's incredible for me. And Engineering Genius, which helps me build the first stage of the pyramids. There's not a lot of wonders that you can use the Engineering Genius 1 on from Age A, but pyramids is one of them. So I'm really happy to get these 3 rocks. And now with my last 2 actions, I'm just trying to avoid corruption. There's nothing super great to take here. So I raise a population. And I'm wrong about that. There is urban growth. That's obviously very good with alchemy to save 2 rocks. So I raise population to avoid corruption, and I grab this important urban growth. I also build a warrior, and is that because I needed to get out of corruption? It is not. I did not need to avoid corruption. Why did I make the warrior? Oh, I guess it was to play this fighting ban and go up on strength in case Pepe's been playing some nasty stuff in there. So I passed the turn. Notice I'm not playing this Dark Ages. I don't know why. I should have played the Dark Ages. My opponent's got a bunch of science. You know, if it hits, great. Maybe I was thinking, well, I got alchemy. I make 4 science per turn. It's going to hurt me. So I'll wait to see if it's worth playing. But I really should have just played the Dark Ages. Peppe gets the university under construction, which is sensible. It lets him continue using Cleopatra's bonus rocks. He does have a big hoard of rocks. He can actually almost build this right now. And then he's going to be making 2 science per turn with a culture, and he's not going to have to spend a worker to do it. But he does something kind of weird here. After building 1 stage of this wonder, he then builds his lab. So to me, that's totally backwards. He rushed Stonehenge instead of building a lab. And then when he has the university, which gives 2 science, he now decides to take a moment to build a lab, delaying the construction of this wonder by a turn. There's 6 rocks left. With Cleopatra, he only has 5 rocks, so he cannot, without help from the deck, make the university next turn if he stops to build this lab right now. If you think about it, if you build this lab now, and then next turn you don't build the wonder, this lab made 2 science. 1 this turn, 1 next turn. If you don't build the lab now, and you instead build a stage, and you finish the wonder next turn, you get 0 science this turn, and then 2 next turn. So it's the same thing, but you're getting your wonder built, and you're not committing this extra worker. So I think Peppe did it totally backwards. He messed up the priorities between the wonder and the lab for both of the science-based wonders that he built. All right, so it's my turn here, and I research alchemy. I decide to fix my science a bit. You could say, why not build your wonder? And that's a fair point. I figured since I had Code of Laws and I already had 5 actions, it makes sense to get my science fixed first and then build the pyramids. If I didn't have Code of Laws, then I might have actually preferred to build the pyramids this turn instead of upgrading both my labs. But now I've got my 4 science pretty early still in the game. Age A still has a couple of turns left. I'm very happy about that. I use Engineering Genius to get the pyramids going. Nothing super exciting here, but I grabbed the Warfare. This is a card I've been kind of undervaluing, partly because in the olden days it used to cost 4 science, and I'm still kind of peeved that it costs 5, which is a lot of science. But in Wiedenbaum's videos I've been watching, and I've really been learning a lot. I highly recommend it. He's an amazing player, way better than me. You should definitely check him out if you haven't already. People do take Warfare a lot. It seems like this is a high-level player appreciated card. It does make sense. Not only do you get the strength, but you get a military action. Military actions are a big deal. You can keep more cards, you can draw more cards, and just the ability to hold on to specific cards in the event of specific contingencies, plus of course the increased odds of getting defense cards if you need them, or on the other side of the coin, aggression cards if you need them, war cards if you need them, getting the proper impacts. I mean, the military action really does matter quite a bit, and I figure, hey, I'm Aristotle, I've got good science income already. This is the time to do it instead of just like taking some random yellow card and calling it a day. But I make a mistake here. I don't play the Dark Ages. I really should have played the Dark Ages. Yes, it will suck that I'll probably lose a science or two, but Peppe is kind of stranded with a bunch of science, and he's about to increase his science generation even more, so there was no reason for me not to put the Dark Ages in there when I had the chance. He plays an event. It's a free warrior, which he uses. He grabs Alchemy for 1 action. Doesn't quite get to finish the wonder because the event did not give him a rock. Raises population instead and grabs Breakthrough for some more science. It's a tough one here. He already has a ton of science, but his science production is low, so I don't hate this Breakthrough, and the other cards are not that impressive. He, would have to spend another action to actually play these reserves. He's still only on 4 actions. I think it's a reasonable choice. He gets the Legion down, so he's ahead of me. And this is my last chance to play Dark Ages, and I mess up big time. I don't play it. I think I was just too scared of myself, or maybe thinking like, oh, what if he puts some strength-based events in here? I don't want to help him beat me up or something. But I have the Uncertain Borders. That's like one of the worst ones. It's where the strongest worker steals a yellow token from the bank of the strongest player steals a yellow token from the bank of the weakest player. That's like the worst one that can possibly happen. So I already know that that's not in there. I should not have been afraid of moving it along, and I should have taken a pot shot at Pepe's big stash of science here that he's not able to spend. Okay, I grab Iron for 1 action. Makes sense. That is a science, and it fixes my rocks one day. I research Iron. I upgrade a mine right now, so I'm delaying the pyramids again. If I didn't have Code of Laws, I would have probably built them this turn, but I figure, hey, let's start getting going on those rocks. I raise population, grab Breakthrough for 2 science, and then I pass the turn. Overall, I'm happy with that turn, except for the fact that I didn't play Dark Ages. And now, I actually threw the Dark Ages away. I was really missing the boat on that one. So he plays an event, we get a free temple, and now the event deck moves over with the Dark Ages not in it. He takes Joan, finishes the university, gets his science fixed, plays Joan, he's got the extra strength from the temple, and he also has theology here to raise his strength further if needed. He grabs the knights, researches alchemy, and he passes the turn. Personally, I think in his shoes, I would have just researched alchemy and upgraded a lab. But I also am tending to undervalue knights in a lot of my games. So I don't mind that he researched it and just took the knights, because this does give him the knights to use in the future, and he's got a lot of science already, so it's not urgent for him to upgrade these labs. All right, on my turn here, I take irrigation to get a science, and I gotta start thinking about what leader I want to replace Aristotle with, because the age is about to end. We have Eleanor and Nostradamus, and both of them are pretty good. I love Eleanor. It is such an interesting ability. You get your 3 civil actions back when she's replaced, which is awesome. You get more draws, which is great. But I choose to go for Nostradamus simply out of respect for Joan. I don't want to do this, but I am conscious of the fact that my opponent has this extra military action, more strength than me, and I don't want to get bombed by all these events that might be in here because I don't have any knowledge of what's in there except for what I myself have in my hand that didn't get put in. So I decided to grab Nostradamus again. I do lean on him quite a bit so that I can try to avoid the negative outcomes of the strength-based events. I finished the pyramids. Of course, it's my last chance to do so. I take Nostradamus, I play him, and now I put this under construction. I end up not building it. I knew there was a chance I wouldn't get to build it because there might be military pressure diverting my rocks, but it was a free action to put it into construction, so I thought, let's go for it and see if I can do it. I think it's a mistake, even with it being a free action, because if you end up having it sit there for the entirety of Age 2, and you just don't build it, that means you're not able to take any Age 2 wonders under construction because it's taking up your wonder slot if you're waiting for this to disappear at the start of Age 3. That being said, if I can't build this, then I certainly can't build any Age 2 wonder, so maybe it's not that big of a deal. I researched the warfare so that now I am not the weakest. Peppe is the strongest and also the weakest on military here. And I've grabbed cultural heritage. I got 6 actions. So yeah, spending 2 actions for 2 science, who knows? That might be handy. And if nothing else, I had nothing better to do with my time. So I passed the turn. I'm overall pretty happy with how things are going here. I get my first culture, but it's not too bad. Peppe is in the lead by 10 points, and he's getting 3 more culture than me. But if I start playing events now, I'm getting 3 culture from Nostradamus for each event. So it's not actually as bad as it looks. And I have a much better economy. Peppe does have me tied on science, and he can go up to 6 very easily, plus he has a big store of science, which is going to be unbothered by the Dark Ages that I could have had in there. However, I have iron already researched. I'm beating him on rocks, and I can beat him further. Also, he still needs to do something about his food. He only has 4 actions to my 6, and it's going to be costly for him to get this irrigation, whereas I already have irrigation in hand and can basically get it going right now. And that's really the main thing, is I have 2 extra civil actions compared to him, which is a huge deal. So I was feeling very good about this game at this point. Okay, we get to H2. He gets the knights down. He blows up a warrior to replace it with a knight, which you don't really like to do, but it kind of makes sense. It lets him make a phalanx. And now he is the strongest, and also I am the weakest, despite Nostradamus' assistance. He upgrades a lab, and he grabs this irrigation, which hurts, but he does need to fix his food. Now, something he could have considered here is taking and playing monarchy with the science. However, if you do that, the problem is then irrigation is going to fall off. Like right now, if you leave these 3 cards, irrigation drops there. I can't take it because I already took it. And then it drops to here, and then you can take it for free, or not for free, for 1 action next turn. But what then are you doing with your 2 actions this turn? There's nothing to do except take and play this monarchy, because you already have the knights, and you already, well, I guess he could take swords. Yeah, I didn't think about that. Maybe you should have taken swordsman, actually, now that I think about it. Instead of irrigation, take the swordsman and drama, and let the irrigation come to you cheaply, 1 action cheaper next turn. In this particular case, we do have Bach, so drama is actually a pretty good tech to have. Hey, okay, no matter how much I prepare for these videos, there's always something I discover on a further replay. Yeah, I think the irrigation's a mistake here. You only have 4 actions. Every action is really precious. Take swordsman and drama, and then next turn take irrigation for 1, and then now you got these 2 valuable technologies. All right, well, anyway, it's passed over to me. So I researched the swordsman, and I do upgrade both of my warriors to swordsmen so that now, again, Peppe is the strongest and weakest. So I'm happy about that. I didn't play an event because I was scared of the events that my opponent put in there, so I missed out on 3 culture from Nostradamus. I research irrigation, and I upgrade both farms. And I think that was actually a mistake. I think I should have upgraded one of my mines for 3 instead of upgrading both farms for 4, because again, what exactly do I need this worker for right now? There's no military tax coming. There's nothing I need to be doing with an extra worker. I think it's a little thing I've learned from watching Wiedenbaum's videos, which is like, instead of just doing something because it needs to get done, like, you need to upgrade your farms, it needs to happen. Like, instead of just doing it because it needs to get done, do it when it really matters. Like, yes, getting it now gives me 2 extra food or something, lets me get a worker, but I don't really need that worker for anything. So maybe it would have been better to get my rocks improved first and then get the farms later. Now, I've got 2 actions left to burn. There's nothing super amazing to take here, but I grabbed the knights just in case we need to get some emergency tactics online, and I play the cultural heritage to get out of my hand. All right, so it's Pepe's turn, and I should mention I did get this tactic, the mobile artillery. Is that what that's called? I'm pretty sure that's what that's called. He nails it! Woo! And the crowd goes wild. He remembered the name of a card without having to look it up. The mobile artillery, that is a good one. It's 2 units for 5 strength, so that means that my desire for cannon is higher than it otherwise might be. Now, Peppe takes Napoleon, which I find kind of interesting. It's not what I would have done. The reason is that Napoleon is currently giving him 4 strength and a military action. Joan is giving him 1 strength and a military action. So yes, Napoleon is a strength increase, but if you take Napoleon and you don't just like obliterate your opponent with the strength differential, then what you're doing is you're giving up the potential to get something else from an age 2 leader. And there are a number of leaders here that could be giving him useful things. Nobel and Newton could give science. Newton also gives actions, which is very valuable. Bach is here to give culture. Admittedly, Watt and Shakespeare are a little bit trickier to use, but still, there's 3 other leaders in here that could be helping you economically. So Napoleon's a gamble, because if you don't turn that strength into an advantage, then the opportunity cost is very high, especially if you're spending 2 actions to take him. Maybe my opponent didn't want me to take Napoleon and get back on strength, so he was trying to be preemptive about it. But Nobel is here, so if I want strength, I can get it anyways. But anyway, he decides to go for the Napoleon right now. He grabs iron, which is a bit late. He upgrades lab, and he passes the turn. Dark Ages would have been incredible here, just would have been so good. It hurts me to think about. I decide to grab the Nobel to get my science up and get my strength up. I'm 3 behind, which does kind of suck. But with my 3 military actions, thanks to warfare, I can defend against aggressions. I grab cannon, again, because that is important for me to get with the mobile artillery going, and also because I don't want Napoleon to get cannon. Yes, there is another copy of cannon in the deck, but one thing I'm learning is that you shouldn't make your judgments based on worst case scenarios. I find I would do this a lot, where I'd be like, well, there's no point taking cannon, because if another copy shows up, I did nothing. Well, I didn't do nothing. It stopped my opponent from getting it for 1, and there are 32 cards left in the deck, of which the second copy of cannon is but a 1. So if that one happens to be in even the second half of the deck, it'll be a while before Peppe can get it online, and, you know, timing is everything in this game. So I do stand by this decision. I think it's correct for me to take this cannon here, both for myself and to deprive Peppe of it. Now, for my last action, I research knights, I get the food, and I do make a knight. Had I upgraded a mine last turn, I wouldn't have been able to do this, but I'm not sure it really makes that big of a difference either. So I play the knight, I get the medieval army down, and then I pass the turn. As we're going to see, there's only 1 card in here that ends up being a strength significant card. And it comes out right now when I'm losing on tiebreak. Reign of Terror, which really does suck. So had that come out differently, my opponent would have been under the Reign of Terror, but instead it is me. He researches iron, he upgrades a mine, he takes strategy to fix his military later and gets some more military actions, leaving rifleman here, which I'm happy about. And then he passes the turn. Notice how the action is a big issue. The fact that he has only 4 actions makes it harder for him to get out these techs that he has plenty of science for. On my turn, I play an event, and now, of course, it's just a nothing burger. Now that I'm winning on strength tie breaks, now nothing happens. I do get extra food because I built my farms. I lose a worker, I pay the food to get him back, and now what? Well, I grab Team Sports to fix my happy faces. There is organized religion here, but I figure Team Sports, I can do it right now. Good action now, better than the best action later. It also gives me 2 strength, so I am winning even on tie breaks if needed. Little did I know neither of these events were strength-based. I also grab reserves. Now you might say, wait a minute, Boris, are you an idiot? Why not take efficient upgrade? Then you can upgrade your mine for 1 action instead of 2. The reason I took reserves is so that I could research cannon, play reserves, and build a cannon next turn to stay ahead on strength. Now you might say, Papa Boris, you are falling behind on culture every single turn here. Your leader generates no culture. Why are you so worried about strength? It's not like you're going to be able to mount some big offensive. And yes, you do have a point. Perhaps going for strength was not the correct move here. Maybe it would have been smarter to try to upgrade my mines and get this Taj Mahal built. That might have actually been a smarter strategy. All right, so Pepe's up. He researches irrigation. He upgrades a farm, raises population, gets the strategy down, so he's now once again ahead of me, and then he passes the turn. I don't play an event, even though I could have played a pretty safe event here because I am worried about the strength differential, but it turns out that was actually a bluff. So I research cannon, raise population, play the reserves as planned. I'm really delaying those mine upgrades, so I'm missing out on a lot of rock production. But now I am finally clearly ahead on strength, and I grab these 2 efficient upgrades so I can research or upgrade my mines later. I also take a frugality for some extra food, and then I pass the turn. So Peppe is very happy to see constitutional monarchy drop down to the front row. He flips a rats, then he plays constitutional monarchy, finally fixes his actions, and now he can breathe a little easier. Now with all these actions, both civil and military, all he needs to do is not fall too far behind on strength and try to build on his culture lead, and he has a very good shot of winning this game because I'm still stuck on one culture, and because I've been afraid to play events, and he hasn't been, he's been getting a bigger culture lead than you might think just based on the culture generation difference. He gets down an antiquated classic army, which I'm very happy to see because the riflemen have come and gone. There's only one copy in the deck in a 2-player game, and that was missed by both of us. He now takes Organized Religion to fix his happy faces at some point, upgrades the other farm, and takes Wave of Nationalism because he is behind, so that is, 6 rocks? Yeah. I think instead of upgrading a farm, he should have upgraded his mine, though. Same logic. He doesn't need a worker right now, and he does need to get his rocks going. But maybe you could say, well, this gets him up to 2, and then the next turn he gets up to 4, and then he can pull a worker out of the bank and avoid corruption. It's possible that that was also a reasonable course of action. All right, so it's my turn. What the hell do I do with my life? Well, I finally play an event, and it turns out it's just rebellion, so there's nothing to worry about here. At this point, basically, my main problem is culture. I am not it's not cripplingly behind. It's not like this is a disaster the way that it was against Nasty Michael, but I am, 20 points behind and falling an extra 2 points every single turn. So I've got to do something about my culture. And that means I need to get my mines going, and I need to get a building that lets me turn rocks into points. So at this point, my main options are journalism and opera. Journalism is nice because it also gives science, and opera gives an extra culture and happy faces, but I don't really need happy faces because I can just make these relatively cheap team sports that only cost 5 rocks to fix my happy faces instead. So at this point, I decide to ignore both of them and take navigation to help myself win colonies easier and get an extra couple of strength. I don't think that was the right priority. I think a revolutionary idea would have been a better grab from the second row than navigation. I also take the opera, which I do think is a mistake. I don't think I need this culture. Neither of us took Bach. I think the one extra culture here is made up for by the fact that journalism costs 1 action less to take and makes 2 science extra when I build it. The six that I have here is a bit of an illusion because 2 of it's coming from Nobel. So getting the extra science from journalism would have been really nice. Then I upgrade one of my mines with one of my efficient upgrades and pass the turn, but had I taken journalism, I could have upgraded both of them. So I think I made a couple of misplays here. The navigation is not a huge priority, even if I've been putting colonies in here. The revolutionary idea was better. It's 4 science. I am a little low on science. I have the actions to take and play it. And if I'm not taking that, I mean, hell, just an urban growth to help me get my journalism online better, that would have all been better, I think, than the turn that I played. So it is Pepe's turn. Here, he plays an event. We get some free rocks, which is nice for both of us. He upgrades a mine, grabs some urban growth for rocks in the future, upgrades the other mine, a real building turn for him. Takes a breakthrough for 2 actions and a revolutionary idea. Now that is kind of strange. He's got a lot of science saved and is making 6 per turn. I think that it would have made more sense to take reserves and journalism. Journalism, because he still also needs a way to get culture. It's not like he's going to ride to the end of the game with 3 per turn. So this gives him a way to get more culture. Maybe it's not as ideal as opera would have been, and I took the opera, so one silver lining of me taking opera incorrectly is that it stops Peppe from having it. But, having a building you can make that gives you 2 culture per turn, and even the science is nice, because with a lot of science, you can maybe go crazy on some of those H3 military, or H3 techs. Would have been better than having more yellow cards that give science. So now, on my turn, I make what I think is a pretty interesting play. So pause for a moment. What would you do in this situation? Here, there's a lot of things that I could do. I am about to lose this Taj Mahal, so that's not an option because these cards are about to appear and that's about to go away as an unfinished Age 1 wonder. I could, of course, research opera and make an opera. I'd have to blow up a mine to do it, but it is an option. I could also blow up a swordsman to do it and make an opera to start generating some culture. There's also this transcontinental railroad, which I could do. It will generate 5 strength and get me 2 extra rocks every turn, which is nice. If there's an early oil, I could get a lot of rocks with it. But I decided to get Suez Canal. And this is something I don't normally think about because with Suez Canal, you typically look at this as a wonder that's like, well, you build it if you have a lot of colonies. And right now my number of colonies is Zero. But in one of Wiedenbaum's games from the finals of last year's championship, one of the players did this where he took a Suez Canal and just built it, even though he had like no colonies in play when he did it. So it was a very instructive moment for me because when you're looking at this wonder, it's sort of a heuristic decision-making shortcut to say, well, should I build it or not? It depends on how many colonies I have. But you should also consider what colonies you have in hand. I have an inhabited territory, which gives a boost, well, it adds 3 yellow tokens to your bank. That's a pretty big deal here. As I mentioned before, if you have 2 irrigation, once you clean out this part of your token bank, your worker source dries up because you're now making only 1 food per turn. Your next worker costs 5. It's just horrible. And you basically run out of the ability to make new workers, and I am currently out of workers. So getting 3 extra workers in here is amazing, especially because 2 of them pop out for free with this colony. I figure if that's the only thing I get, this is kind of like a ghetto Statue of Liberty, and I love the Statue of Liberty, so it's worth doing it right now. I play an event, and this is nice. For once, we do get a really good strength-based event. Peppe did fix his civil actions. He now has 6 instead of 4. So he does have 4 left over after this, but still that's huge. And then I go for it. I put the Suez Canal under construction. I build it with the rest of my turn. And I get this inhabited territory out here for 2 workers and another one in the bank I can actually get out next turn. So I fix my worker issues. I also get a war and this tactic, which is not ideal. I need modern infantry for it. But if I do get modern infantry, I can now get that age 3 tactic online. All right, so he gets organized religion down. He does have revolt, so he does need to fix that issue. And what to do now with his last 2 actions? Well, he decides to raise population and grab an engineering genius. I'm not a super huge fan of this. This is a bit speculative because there's no guarantee he's going to be able to put this to use. Personally, what I would have done in this situation is taken computers. It's a little bit weird because he does have good science already, so you might argue that a smarter move is to take tanks to open himself up to higher tactics, or just a revolutionary idea. But he already took revolutionary idea from H2, so he doesn't necessarily need more revolutionary ideas. And computers here puts a lot of pressure on me, because then what's going to happen is Bill Gates drops down 5 spaces to here, and I have an uncomfortable choice to make. Bill Gates is not good for me. Bill Gates is 1 rock. Each lab makes rocks equal to its level, so I'd be getting 2 rocks per turn and a trickle of points at the end. It's not amazing, and if the other computers doesn't show up, then this Bill Gates is useless for me. But if I don't take the Bill Gates, he can take the Bill Gates and generate a ton of rocks pretty much right away. And that will help him, in the future, if he can get a building that lets him turn rocks into culture, like multimedia or movies, then he can spring to life. He can also potentially build some wonders more easily. But he doesn't make that play, which I'm happy about. He just grabs this speculative yellow card and passes the turn. So on my turn, I play an event, and it's on certain borders, which I put in. So I steal a yellow token from him. So now I've generated 4 yellow tokens, which is awesome. And I have a really critical turn here. I need to decide what I'm doing in this age. If you look at the situation here, I'm still behind on culture, though not cripplingly so. I think the correct play here is just research opera and make an opera. You got plenty of workers. Make another opera next turn. Get 6 extra culture per turn. Get crunkin'. If you're feeling spicy, take multimedia. It does cost 2 extra actions, but then you're also fixing your science so that when you replace your leader, you're not missing the 2 science from Nobel as much, and it generates the same culture as opera, though it does cost 2 extra actions to get it into play, and of course an extra 3 rocks to build. That's also a reasonable move. I make what I think is like the worst possible decision here, which is I take computers and Bill Gates. My thinking was, well, next turn, I will get computers and Bill Gates and make a bunch of rocks, and then I'll take it from there. But I already had a good way to use the rocks I currently have to generate culture, and I think that would have been smarter. Also, as we'll see, this plan has a bit of a flaw to it. So I overlooked something. Had I noticed it, I would not have done this thing. Instead, I'm kind of wasting half my turn. These 3 actions are very poorly used. Just hell, taking a revolutionary idea and a breakthrough would have been better for me. Now, I still do research opera and make 1 opera, so now I have stemmed the bleeding, though I still need to somehow catch up. And for my last action to grab tanks, this I think is a bit of a mistake. I'm basically saying, well, if I get mobilized army, or what the hell is that tactic called? I can never remember the name. Mechanized army, not mobilized army. If I can get a mechanized army, the tanks will let me use it. But I don't think that was a super high priority. I think taking more science would have been better. So I passed the turn. Now, what is it that I overlooked? Well, Peppe didn't overlook it. Here's what I overlooked. I was so hung up on Peppe getting his classic army fixed and thinking, well, he needs the modern infantry to do it, and that might not be anywhere in the deck, that I totally overlooked the fact that with his slew of military actions, what Peppe could do instead, after playing this event, is just take rockets. He takes the rockets, researches it, builds a rocket, basically for free, and then he copies my mobile army. He plays out some cards, grabs multimedia, copies the mobile army, or the mobile artillery, so that's how he fixes his strength, and now he's ahead of me. And now it feels a little bit icky to go for my computers and Bill Gates play, because now I am behind on strength, and he can build another rocket and shoot up another 10 strength, maybe even declare war, which we've seen Peppe do. So, instead of researching computers and playing Bill Gates, I get scared and I take air forces. I still think I should have just taken computers, or researched computers and played Bill Gates. I think it was still the correct play. I mean, nothing wrong with taking air forces, but then I should do it next turn if he declares war on me. And if not, well, he can't get an aggression off. And if he plays an event and it's some good strength-based thing, then oh well. I think I should have gone for it. Otherwise, I basically threw away my chance to get a leader in age 3 because turns are going by without me playing Bill Gates. And I'm also giving up on all these rocks I could have been getting. The other thing to note is that modern infantry lands here, which is good because there's only one copy of it. So if I take it, Peppe can't take it. But what I should have done instead of making an air force is actually research the modern infantry and upgraded my infantrymen for flat strength bonuses. Going from 2 to 5 twice would have allowed me to get an extra 6 strength and get ahead of Peppe. So if I wanted to be cautious, I could have done that instead of researching the airplanes. Now, why that instead of airplanes? Well, the thing is that when I do this, I'm left with 7 science, which means that if Peppe doesn't threaten me, I'm 1 science short of being able to play computers and get Bill Gates online. And that is exactly what happens. Because I never took any of those yellow science cards that were available. Peppe now is like, hold up, I'm just going to play multimedia, disband a warrior, and get my culture up by 3 and my science up by 3. Yeah, I'll take an air force for later, but you can just kind of have a turn to take a break there, buddy. He researches but does not make an air force. So now I could have researched computers and gotten them if only I'd done modern infantry instead of air forces, but because I spent those 2 extra science for air forces, I'm like, oopsie, I don't have the science. I do get to take advantage of this event, and I get 6 extra points against him. I also get a population, and he loses 1, which is great. I also build a cannon here, thinking maybe I could use this tactic. This is an infantry and 2 cannons at some point, and if not, well, I can make a knight later and get another mobile artillery. But it would have been nice if I could have gotten computers and efficiently upgraded one of my labs and played Bill Gates and started getting my rock production going. I do still play the Bill Gates for 2 rocks, and I raise my population, I grab some reserves, finally upgrade my last mine and get an urban growth, but it would have been a much stronger turn if computers was down. So I actually play the entrenchments, which is a little bit optimistic, because if I just stayed on mobile artillery, I could make an airplane and a knight. But my thinking here is that with the patriotism, next turn I can declare a war and then use... Sorry, let me pause there. If I research modern infantry and I upgrade one of my warriors, then I have the modern version of this tactic. But I want to use the military action to play it now because I'm very short on military actions. Next turn, I still cannot declare war and get this tactic online next turn I can because I'm playing the tactic this turn. I can play a war over culture, patriotism for 1 military action, modern infantry, upgrade one of my warriors, and now I would have a doubled 9 strength tactic. So I'm trying to threaten Peppe with that war. There's the mechanized army, which is unfortunate because if I had known that was coming, I would have done tanks instead of modern infantry, and I would have had an extra strength because that one's 10 instead of the 9 for the one that I'm using. We get this popularization of science from his event, which is sad. He gets 5 points ahead of me. He plays the reserves for food, makes a warrior or a worker. He builds his air force to get ahead of me on strength, grabs the other computers, researches them, gets some more science, and an efficient upgrade, and he passes the turn. And so now the question is, do I declare war on him or not? And I decide yes. I decide it's time to declare the war. So the thing is that at this point, even though it seems like a very narrow margin, I get the modern infantry with the patriotism. I can upgrade 1 to get my tactic upgraded to the modern version, which is 9 instead of 5, and it's doubled with the airplanes. I'm only 10 strength ahead of Napoleon. but it's a little bit better than it looks because as long as I take a single card out of the row that is not already going to go away, Napoleon's going to disappear when Age 4 is triggered before the war resolves. It's important. Cards in the card row get updated, and cards are drawn from the deck, thus triggering the end of an age before a war is resolved. So he's not really 10 points behind me. He is actually 16 points behind me because he's currently got 3 different units, and Napoleon is giving him 6 strength for that. Now, there is a problem with my plan, which is fundamentalism. And the fact that because I never played Dark Ages, Peppe still has all the science. So he will be able to, let's say fundamentalism pops up here, take it for 3 actions, research it for 4, play reserves for more rocks for 5, blow up something to get a worker for 6, and then make an airplane, or make a rocket, beg your pardon. The rocket's worth 10. So the 6 strength from fundamentalism counters the 6 strength loss from Napoleon going away, and then the rocket gives the 10 strength needed, 5 for the rocket plus 5 for the tactic to catch up to me, making it a dead even war. And if you're thinking, well, Boris, what do you benefit from in this line? You're behind on culture, making less culture per turn, you're doing a tied war. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where when you're behind, take risks. Fundamentalism is 1 card out of 7. So when 4 cards come out here, there's a higher than 50% chance of it coming up. But that does mean there's a higher than 40% chance of it not coming up. And then I will, after all is said and done, be 6 strength ahead. And I'm stealing 11 culture. So that, 6 plus 5 from the War over Culture. So that is a 22-point swing. And I figure a 40-some% chance of a 22-point swing is the kind of risk I gotta take when I'm behind in this situation. Now, I'm out of military actions, which is sad, because obviously I would have loved to use some of these rocks to make more military units. But hey, thank God for warfare, because if I didn't have that extra military action, I would have been able to do this war at all. So that's, warfare being an MVP for me right here. Now, what I do here, since I can't spend more rocks to make more military units, is I split my attention a little bit. I do put the United Nations under construction, and I grab the Engineering Genius. Now, this wonder is worth 16 points for me because I have 4 different urban buildings. I'm not going to get multimedia going, so I'm not going to get the 5th type, but still 16 points is perfectly fine. I call 16, a medium wonder. It's not huge. It's not super big. I think they have to get into the 20s for me to call them big, but it's a medium wonder. 16 points is a healthy chunk of the differential, and it's also not impossible. I get one of these other 2 wonders too. Thanks to the extra rocks I'm getting from the Suez Canal and Bill Gates. I could make one of these as well. I get a little bit lucky. You could say that all the wonders are kind of near the back of the deck, so they could have easily fallen off by now, but they haven't, and that might mean I can, maybe if I'm lucky, get some of the culture back and still sneak out a win in this game that I have been outplayed in. Now, in the previous games, Peppe has had a little bit of a tendency to mess up on his last turn. And in this game, I lose the coin flip. Fundamentalism does pop out, but Peppe doesn't take it. And I don't know why. Maybe he missed it. You cannot take it and take Marie Curie, and maybe he was just really hung up on taking Marie Curie. For whatever reason, he just misses this, which would have allowed him, as I explained before, to spend exactly 6 actions to exactly time me in the war. But instead he takes Marie Curie, so she makes up 3 of the strength that Napoleon is giving. So Napoleon goes out and he loses 6, but then he gets back 3 from Marie Curie's ability. But 3 ain't gonna cut it. Now he can only go up to 40 strength, and then he's still 3 behind me, so I'm still stealing 8 strength from him, or 8 culture from him. But what's even weirder is he doesn't even do that. He takes civil service, researches it, grabs some cards, fixes his food some more, and he passes the turn without ever building a rocket. He just lets me steal 18 strength from him. I don't know why. I mean, by researching 2 techs, he does get Nobel's bonus, and he does get food for a worker. But I'm pretty sure that the 20 points that a rocket would have been worth is more than whatever miscellaneous impact-related stuff he got from doing this turn. It was a really baffling turn, so Pepe's parting present to me, I suppose, was one more time, for old time's sake, messing up at the very end of the game. I do think this is what cost him. And what's really weird is, spoiler alert, this event that he played was Impact of Strength, which is all the more reason that you would want to make sure you're not behind on strength. If he had gotten close to me or tied me, he could have had a chance to actually win that event that he himself played. Another airplane would have been another 10 strength, and maybe I decide, I don't really feel like fighting for strength, or I've got a wonder to build, and he could have won 20 points. It's kind of a weird thing about events in this game. When a card is in your hand, it's worth whatever it says. Like if you have Impact of Strength and you're thinking about playing it, let's say you're going to win it, it's worth 10 points. But once it's in the deck, it's actually worth 20 points. Because once it's in the deck, it's like, well, either you win it and you get 10 and you go up 10 against your opponent, or your opponent wins it and goes up 10 points ahead of you. So the difference between going up by 10 or going down by 10 is actually now 20. It's a 20-point swing. So he should have been trying to fight it. So not losing that much culture in the war and having a chance to get 20 points for Impact of Strength mattered way more than his turn here. And so, unfortunately, he does make a huge mistake at the end and throws the game away. Now, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. By the way, I commented on that Engineering Genius 2 that he took at the end of the previous age when he could have taken a different card, and he does end up throwing it away because he never got a chance to build a wonder. So now I steal 18 strength. We are tied. And although it may look like I'm in some trouble, by the way, I tried an aggression. I was pretty sure it would fail, but I had nothing else to do. I had literally nothing else to do. We're in age 4, so I'm not drawing any more cards. I can't declare another war. It just is one of those things. By the way, I can't declare a war, I should note, because even though I have the actions for it, and I still could do it, the age 4 triggered on my turn, not on Pepe's, but now Pepe could just beat me, because I don't have the patriotism, so he could just now beat me at the war. So I just tried this aggression. I know it's going to fail. It does fail. And at this point, even though it may look like I'm behind on culture generation, it's not actually as bad as it looks because I haven't gotten my 4 culture yet. So I am going to get this. So I'm going to get this twice, whereas Pepe's going to get this 9 once. So I'm only a little bit behind. And unlike Pepe, I've got this wonder going. So I build the United Nations. And at this point, I actually have kind of an interesting decision to make, which is what to do with this turn. There is fast food chains here, which Pepe could build. He has 12 rocks and a reserves. But what he doesn't actually have are the actions. If he has to take it from the second row, then that's 4 actions to take it and another 4 actions to build it, which is 8. But he needs a 9th action to play the reserves. So I actually want to make sure that he cannot take fast food actions from the first row, because from the first row, it would be 3 to take, 4 to play the reserves, and 8 to actually build it. This means I cannot take oil. Now, why would I want to take oil? Well, because what Pepe could do if he cannot build fast food chains is he could hate draft it to stop me from building it. And if he does that, he could also take and research oil and get his oil up to 9, or get his rock production up to 9, which would tie me, which would rob me of 7 points from the Empire State building that I'd be building as a constellation. So there's like this weird circle, snake biting its tail kind of thing, where I don't want to let him get fast food chains for 1 because he can build it, which means I'm leaving it at 2. Which means I'm going to be taking the Empire State Building because he hate drafts the fast food chains. The Empire State Building is worth 14 points for me because I'm ahead on rocks and I'm ahead on strength. But Pepe could take the oil and tie me on the rocks, so I take the oil, but if I take the oil, then he actually builds the fast food chain. So I had a really fun time in my life spending some unreasonable number of minutes playing that merry-go-round over and over. Ultimately, what I realized was I needed to leave that oil there. So what do I do with my time? Well, at this moment, I am actually not getting 9 rocks. I'm corrupt. So I'm going to be only getting 7 rocks. 8 plus 7 is 15, plus these reserves makes 19. So if I'm building the Empire State Building, which costs 17, it means that I have 2 rocks to work with. And I could spend an urban growth to build an opera, but that would cost me 4 rocks. So what I do instead is I play the reserves now for 4 rocks, and then I play an urban growth to build an arena for 1. Now, if I hadn't played the reserves, I would have still been corrupt. And it is important for me to get the reserves out of the way because I didn't actually talk about this. The way that I get the fast food chains built, if Pepe doesn't hate draft it, is I have to spend my exactly 9 science to play engineering, then 4 actions to take the fast food chains under construction, and then a 5th action to actually build all 4 stages in one go. So I need to use the actions, all the actions that I have. I only have 6. It takes 4 to put it under construction, 5 for engineering, and then 6 to build. I don't have time next turn to play those reserves. All right, that's that turn. And my last action, I believe, was insignificant. Yeah, I just took a card that didn't actually matter, and then we passed the turn. So now Peppe cannot build the fast food chains. He also can't build the Empire State Building. He could hate draft the Empire State Building, but then I build the fast food chains, which is worth more points. So he makes the correct play. He takes the fast food chains as a hate draft. He raises population. He builds another temple to fix his happy faces and stop revolt. Then he takes and researches satellites in case I put in Impact of Variety or Impact of Progress, but I didn't put in either one of those things. So that did nothing. And then he passes the turn. So now on my turn, I'm left with the Empire State Building, which is fine. I put it under construction. I build it for 14 points. And with my last action, I take engineering in case Peppe put in Impact of Variety or Impact of Variety, though he didn't end up doing either of those things either. And then we go to the end of the game. So there's only 2 events that both of us played through this entire game, and because of Pepe's decision about the war and my ability to build the wonders, I end up having a really sizable lead, never from culture generation, but just from flat culture gains. So there's not really any risk going into the final scoring. I'm shocked to see Impact of Strength here, so Peppe gifted me 10 points. And then there's my event, the Impact of Happiness, which I thought I could get a big chunk on, though Peppe did fix happy faces by the end. It just doesn't matter. And I get a solid 42-point victory against my most feared opponent throughout this entire stage. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like and or subscribe, and I'll see you again soon, though not with Through the Ages, sadly. This stage needs to finish because all the other groups need to keep on playing their games. My group was a little bit faster than most of them, but when stage 3 starts and then those games take however long to finish, we'll be back because I did make it to stage 3. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you soon.